Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with my co-host, Nassau Community College student, Stacy Raine.
And Bill, today we are going to learn about an organization called FCA, Family and Children's Association, an organization that protects and strengthens Long Island's most vulnerable children, seniors, families, and communities. Our guest today is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, their president and CEO.
Dr. Reynolds, welcome to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
This is, I think, going to be a very interesting show because obviously it's a fascinating topic. But tell us a little bit about yourself first and what brought you to becoming the president and CEO of this organization.
So, the organization has been around for almost 140 years. I haven't been there the entire time, as you can tell from my youthful appearance. But I've been there about 10 years. And prior to that, I ran the Long Island Council on Alcoholism and Drug Dependence. And prior to that, worked in the field of HIV and AIDS when it was a burgeoning epidemic for about 20 years. So always been in the not-for-profit space. For me, FCA is the embodiment of that work in that we provide more than 40 different programs to people across the lifespan. So everything from a children's co-op nursery in the village of Hempstead to senior programs and everything in between.
Now, who would be your typical person that walks in to see you, your organization?
It depends. We have 13 different locations, Bill, and it might be last night that a 13-year-old who found himself homeless knocked on the door of our Nassau Haven shelter in Wantua. It might be this afternoon that somebody for the first time reaches out for help with a heroin or fentanyl addiction. This afternoon, it could be seniors who have struggled for years to make it work and have finally reached a point where their finances have fallen apart. And that's the beauty about FCA. You don't need to go to 5 different organizations to get your needs met. We meet them all in one place. In a lot of cases, we're able to serve entire families. And so we know in this day and age, particularly here on Long Island where the economy is challenging, that families are doubling up and tripling up when it comes to multiple generations. So very often families come to us and say, I really need help finding childcare, and my grandson has a substance use disorder or a mental health problem, and my parents are living upstairs and it's not working out. The good thing about FCA is we're able to deal with all of those problems and not say you have to go to here for mental health care or to this other agency across the island for another service.
It's so interesting to hear this, and Stacy, I'm sure you're in the same situation. When I think of a problem, it's because Uncle Joe took too much mashed potatoes at the dinner table, and these are real problems, and I'm saying it because you're dealing with the real problems day to day and what we see on Long Island. So, first of all, thank you.
Of course. Here on Long Island, it's challenging because there's a lot of problems that Long Island faces that we don't necessarily readily acknowledge. When people ask me how the heroin problem here on Long Island got so bad, my response is because we pretended it didn't exist for 10 years. We pretended our kids couldn't, experiment with heroin. When we look at a children's mental health crisis, COVID didn't invent problems with kids' mental health, but it made them worse, and it increased our awareness a little bit. And so the notion that all of the social ills that we typically align with urban areas somehow can't make it through the Midtown Tunnel is really a fantasy. And the reality is here on Long Island, we've got people who are struggling with poverty, people who are struggling with mental health issues, substance use disorders, and pretty much everything else. But because of our suburban nature, they tend to do it very privately and very quietly, which means that we don't always see the problems right away.
Very interesting.
You said you help with a variety of things all in one place, which I love because, I'm a mom of 3. I have a busy family. It's hard to, if you need help, it's hard to go one place here, one place there. So I love that you say that you help everybody all in one place. That's really, it's a great concept. But you mentioned all these different places that you help, or ways that you help people. Is there one that's growing faster? You mentioned heroin. Is that the sort of fastest growing problem we have? Or is there another one? What are you seeing the most of right now?
Well, I really wish there was only one that we could talk about. But there are a couple things that we're focused on, and we've started some new programs to deal with them. The fentanyl crisis and the addiction crisis here on Long Island is out of control. Suffolk County ranked near the top of the list when it comes to fatal overdoses across New York State for several years running. We're losing upwards of 2 of our neighbors per day due to fatal overdoses, which are completely preventable. And so the overdose crisis is something that we're focused on. children's mental health is directly connected to that. And it got worse during COVID, and we see lots and lots of young people who use drugs and alcohol as a way of medicating away their anxiety or their depression or something else that they're experiencing, especially given the lack of good mental health care here on Long Island. And so children's mental health would be the second thing. The third thing really is the aging of a population that's been ignored for a long time. And the single largest growing population of both Nassau and Suffolk County right now are people over the age of 80. We are ill-equipped to meet their needs in any way, shape, or form, whether we're talking about the wreckage that happened in nursing homes during COVID or the lack of home health care aides in this environment. We're not prepared in any way, shape, or form. So at FCA, we try to spot these trends on the horizon, whether they be population trends or new things happening in our community, and then design programs that address them. One of the things that has changed, because I always like to leave things on an up note, I talk a lot about the problems, and listening to this, you're like, geez, Long Island's a terrible place. There are problems that we're overcoming, though, and there are things that where we're able to make a difference. And so I think about the rates of gun violence, for example, in the village of Hempstead 5 years ago. They were on the rise. People were being shot left and right. We started a new program made up of credible messengers, that is folks who have lived and worked and existed in Hempstead for a long time. They don't look, act, or talk like me. And they're the ones who are outgoing, having conversations about retaliatory violence. We've been able to almost completely reduce gun violence in the village of Hempstead by launching a new innovative program to complement what's happening in law enforcement, but to find ways to make inroads into communities to say, look, we can help you find a job. We can help you do things that will create meaning in your life so that you're not resorting to violence. And so for every problem we identify, we also try to come up with innovative solutions that maybe haven't been tried in other places that'll work here.
Now, Dr. Reynolds, one of the groups that I like to hear about, and we know that your organization works with seniors.
Yes.
And I think that's so important because these are people who've served the country, worked hard for years, and because they're doing something good, living longer, sometimes they're almost stuck in a bad pattern that they're going into. How does the organization work with seniors? Why would a senior come to them, and what can they do together?
Sure. We've got about a dozen programs that help seniors. One of the ones that I'm most proud of is our Ombuds program that operates in Nassau County, in which we have a skilled and trained volunteer in every skilled nursing facility across Nassau County. And I referenced kind of nursing homes and the COVID experience a few minutes ago. You know, nursing homes are chronically short-staffed. Families are chronically frustrated. We spend a lot of time focused on quality of care and making sure that we give those residents a voice. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we're keeping seniors in their homes for as long as possible. That's everybody's goal universally. And so we do offer financial counseling to seniors. We offer case management. We have chore workers that go into homes to help with light cleaning and things like that. Everything designed to uplift that quality of life, but also try to keep you in your home. The other thing, and we tend to talk about these problems in a siloed kind of way, so I talked about children's mental health, but seniors' mental health is a big issue. And when we think about addiction, for example, we don't necessarily think about seniors who might be having a hard time managing their medication, who, for example, process and metabolize alcohol differently, who tend to be more isolated, who tend to be more depressed. And so when we talk about kids and mental health, or we talk about addiction among people who are between the ages of 30 and 50, we also have to talk about seniors and how this impacts them. And so we try to do that integrated approach to make sure that we're covering all the bases and serving those needs. So I'm really proud of the programs that we offer seniors.
And I would think just to know that someone like your organization cares about them, to give them a line of communication to talk to someone for a senior, because very often they don't need a big facility or something. They just need someone to chat with a little bit and talk about the good old days or the music or the 1959 Brooklyn Dodgers, whatever they like. But it stimulates them, and it's a win-win for everybody.
We have a friendly visitor program that does exactly that. It's volunteers that go into seniors' homes, but they're also our eyes and ears to make sure that they're staying safe. And so it's good conversation, but it's also a second set of eyes to make sure that everybody's doing okay.
What a great idea.
Who are the volunteers that do that?
They tend to be recent retirees who say, I want to give back. I want to do something. And very often those families have experienced some of the challenges, and that's why they come and volunteer. They're like, my parents and my grandparents had a rough time and we're pretty isolated, and they step up and volunteer to make a difference. And so we always need volunteers in that program. We do a little bit of training, but it's not a whole heavy kind of thing, and it's just basic socialization and conversations. And you probably have heard this before if you've interviewed folks from the not-for-profit world. Our volunteers say they feel like they get more back than they ever give.
That's a win-win for everybody.
It is, 100%.
I want to take a minute to remind our listeners that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Stacy Raine, here with Bill Horan, and today we are learning about FCA, Family and Children's Association, an organization that protects and strengthens Long Island's most vulnerable children, seniors, families, and communities. Our guest is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, their president and CEO. Dr. Reynolds, I've heard about a couple of programs, the SNUG program and the Thrive program. I would love to hear more about those.
Sure. SNUG is the gun violence program that I just mentioned.
Okay.
Again, made up of folks from the community who reflect the community, who understand the dynamics around community violence. But SNUG and Thrive, so the common denominator in those two programs is that as an organization, we prioritize hiring folks that have lived experience. So folks who have walked the road. I have incredible respect and value folks that have a ton of letters after their name. And as a professional organization, we need that. But I also want folks that have that life experience, that understand how hard it is to make that first call and to ask for help. Mm-hmm. To know that very often you'll pick up the phone 2 or 3 times before you ever dial our number, that you'll even probably hang up when somebody answers the first several times you call for help. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot to pick up the phone and make that first call. And I want folks that understand what that feels like. And so in SNUG, we work with folks who have experienced violence themselves, who have been perpetrators of violence. In Thrive, it's focused on folks that are living in recovery. Mm-hmm. And so all of our staff that are part of Thrive, we have 3 Thrive recovery centers. They're in Westbury, Islandia, and West Hampton Beach. We see more than 15,000 people a year across those centers. And those are centers designed to help you after you've completed treatment to maintain your recovery. One of the things we know is that substance abuse treatment is it's really the acute phase of getting help. And it's like similar to going into a hospital for any other condition. But the real work begins when you are attempting to stay sober for the rest of your life. Mm-hmm. And if you're 25, that seems like a ridiculously long amount of time. We're also focused on, treatment is the thing, and we do provide treatment as well that helps you get drugs out of your life. But how do we help you get some good stuff back in? Mm-hmm. How do we help you rebuild the relationships with your family that you might have demolished when you were actively using drugs? How do we help you write your resume? How do we help you deal with criminal charges that you might have pending? How do we help you get a job so you're not in mom and dad's finished basement playing Xbox all day? And how do we make you more productive? And how do we help you get there? And so the folks that work at Thrive are folks in long-term recovery themselves. We provide recovery coaching on an ongoing basis. If you look at our calendar, for example, for the next month or two, there are probably 100 activities planned at the Thrive Centers because we want people to come to 12-step groups. We want them to come to resume writing workshops. We want them to learn how to express themselves in a positive way without the use of drugs and alcohol. And the heart and soul of that program is people who have walked the road, who can look across to another person and say, I get it because I was there. 5 years ago, I was exactly on your road. For a lot of people, recovery from a substance use disorder is not a straight line. And we're there to pick you up when you stumble a little bit and start over if need be. We know that there's almost every time of year is tricky for folks in recovery, but I'm really proud of our recovery programs. As I mentioned, we do offer treatment programs. We have 2 treatment clinics, one in Hempstead, one in Hicksville. But the recovery centers, and the first one in New York State was actually opened, our center that opened in Islandia 6 years ago, and it's been a huge success and a model that's been replicated, in fact, nationwide.
I want to shift gears a little bit to children's mental health and wellness. You mentioned that COVID had, didn't create the problems, but exacerbated them. So, what kinds of concerns are you seeing in our youngest?
So the most extreme markers we have is that the rates of suicide have probably quadrupled over the course of the past 2 years. The rates of attempted suicides are up. Kids report exceedingly high levels of anxiety, depression, insomnia. All of the national surveys say that about 60% of our kids have contemplated suicide in the last 12 months. That should scare the heck out of all of us.
I'm sorry to interrupt. 60, that's
60%
more
of
than
our
one
kids,
out of 2.
have contemplated suicide in the last
Wow.
12 months. It's an astounding number, and really is a wake-up call that we've got to do more when it comes to children's mental health. And I'll give you a great example. Anyone out there who's tried to get mental health care for their kid will understand that if you call for an appointment today for an adolescent psychiatry appointment, there's a good chance that you're not going to be booked for an appointment for at least 3 or 4 months. Lots of bad things happen to kids in crisis over the course of 3 or 4 months. And in the meantime, families are left to struggle with this on their own. Very often, families wait a long time to get help because as parents, we look at our kids and say, it's just a phase. It's going to be okay. It's middle school. This happens. COVID was tough. It's not always going to be like this. And you maintain that family secret a little bit, thinking it's all going to be okay. We also know that mental health issues tend to be episodic. And so as parents, we see our kids escalate. We get ready to make that call for help, and then things get a little bit better. And we're like, oh, okay, we're good. And I've seen so many families that call and make that appointment. And when the time comes, like in terms of the cycle, things have calmed down, and you're like, we probably are okay. It's going to be good. And as soon as you miss that appointment, things get going again. And so we try to provide that ongoing support to families, case management, parenting tips. There's no handbook for parenting. Most of us just have children. We wind to bring them home from the hospital, and there you go.
Yeah.
Figure it out. And we generally think we're bright enough to figure this out. But quite frankly, there are tried and true things that work and other things that just plain don't work. And providing that support to parents, particularly with kids that do have a significant diagnosis, can make all the difference in the world. Again, one of the bright spots on the horizon is that government has recognized that there's a huge issue with this. There have been several new services started here on Long Island. Our governor has announced a $1 billion investment in children's mental health. We've got our fingers crossed that more of that money will appear on the street and we'll be able to open programs. But it does seem like there's an awakening and there's an understanding that our kids just need more. They need more from us as parents. They need more from schools. They need more from community mental health agencies. And quite frankly, they need more from all of us if we're going to get through this.
What ages of children do you work with? All ages?
All ages. The sweet spot for mental health programs tends to be between the ages of 10 and 15. But we always talk, honestly, by the time a problem develops, it's been brewing for a couple of years before families ever come to us. And generally, families try to do this on their own, as we all do, for an extended period of time until things just get unmanageable. I've said to families more than once, if you're in doubt, you should call us and just have a conversation. Aside from FCA, there are not-for-profit organizations in every community that are ready, willing, and able to help you. Reaching out for help provides a lot of relief for families. It's really, really tough to do. But the relief that families feel after they've got a team working alongside them, either to validate what they're doing or help guide what they're doing, can make all the difference in the world and all the difference for their kids.
Now, Dr. Reynolds, if someone's looking for FCA, your organization, the Family and Children's Association, is there a website or their address they should go to or phone number? Can you give us that?
Yeah, we actually have a brand new website, so thank you for the opportunity to boast a little bit about it. It's FCALI.org, FCALI.org. You could Google us, Family and Children's Association. And then, of course, we're on all of the social media platforms. We're based in Nassau County, but most of our services are field-based, and so we pretty much go anywhere, anytime to provide you the assistance that you need. We also understand the transportation challenges of Long Island. It's called Long Island for a reason. And families in need sometimes spend hours on buses trying to get to services, and we've tried to break that down by providing a lot of our services either remotely or on a field-based kind of way, so we make sure that people have the opportunity to access those services in a very quick way. We also recognize the time urgency with a lot of these things. So hit us up on social, visit our website. Our phone number, I don't know if anybody uses the phone anymore, but our phone number is 516-746-0350. Again, we're based in Garden City, but have 13 locations across Long Island.
And we'll ask you that information before the end of the show again. So if someone didn't get it down, get that pencil and paper out and have it handy. Now, I've heard that you have something called a living skills specialty. What is that and what group is that used with?
So we have a whole track that's focused on workforce development and the development of young people. One of the things that we found doing this for almost 140 years is that there are families that struggle with multi-generational poverty. And finding a way to break out of that is absolutely critical. And so I want us to make sure as an organization we're helping people for today and meeting their needs for today. But I would love to make sure that we're also propping you up to be successful tomorrow, quite frankly, so that you don't need us. As I mentioned as we chatted before the show started, Bill, we're one of the only businesses where our ultimate goal is to put ourselves out of business because we solved all the world's problems. We went on to do other things.
We want you unemployed. Is that it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm rushing to the unemployment line, and then I'll come and do a radio show here maybe.
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
We want to make sure that we're giving people the skills they need to be successful. And here on Long Island, we know that, helping somebody get a minimum wage job is not a formula for success because you need 3 of those in order to rent an apartment here in Nassau County. And so we want to make sure that we're giving you the skills. And I'll give you a quick story that'll kind of bring some of this to life. We had a young woman that came through our housing program. So we have Nassau Haven, it's for runaway homeless and trafficked kids. Then we have Walkabout, which helps you develop those skills that you need in order to be successful. And she came to us and she said, hey, I would love to go into cosmetology. And, some of us groaned a little bit and said, okay, that's good, but I'm not sure that the money's going to be there to sustain yourself. So she pursued this, and then pivoted just a little bit, entered Nassau Community College's mortuary science program, and began doing cosmetology for folks who were deceased at a funeral home, and basically made 5 times as much as she otherwise would have made, is performing a really important, valuable community service. And so with a little bit of tweaking and direction, similar to a pilot correcting course, she's now got a job that completely sustains her and her family. And so sometimes just that little tip, that little hint, that little nudge along the way makes a huge difference in the life of somebody. And really happy to say that it's an example where Nassau Community College played a key role.
That was good. That was like a commercial, and we didn't even pay you for it, nor did we ask you for it. So we're going to have you back a lot to keep doing these commercials.
Excellent.
I'm going to take a minute to remind our listeners that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Stacy Raine, here with Bill Horan, and today we are learning about FCA, Family and Children's Association, an organization that protects and strengthens Long Island's most vulnerable children, seniors, families, and communities. Our guest is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds, their president and CEO.
Dr. Reynolds, tell us about Lakeview House. I understand it's a residence for teens.
Yeah, so we run a variety of residential programs. We have 4 different programs. And Lakeview really focuses on folks that might otherwise be in an institutional setting if they weren't with us. And there, too, we don't provide any programs where folks stay exactly where they are at. Everything we do, I want to make sure that we're helping you move up a ladder of success. And so there we teach young people that have a serious emotional disturbance new coping skills. We help them to get jobs, and the ultimate goal is for you to move out of Lakeview and move into your own independent living situation. If not that, then into something else that's safe and that works for you. And so it's a very successful program. We've run it for as many years as we've been in business. There are a huge number of folks in our community that have serious emotional disturbances, and our chronic response to those folks has been to put them in hospitals, which limits their potential future, which impacts their families. And so we want to make sure that we're moving people up and out. You can stay there for as long as you want, but our goal really is to see you become more successful, get those life skills, find a work situation that works for you, find a way to manage your emotional disturbance in a way that makes sense, keep you engaged in care, and keep you as healthy as can be.
And I like when you mentioned the previous story you told about, and again, it was good for Nassau Community College because they wound up being part of it. But there was someone who wanted to be a cosmetologist. Yeah. Now, by talking to the people in your organization, it only took a little movement to bring her into a similar field, but a little to the left or the right. The income was terrifically more in the new field. Yeah. And by having advice, she obviously saw that there's people who really care. They're knowledgeable. They know where my skills could be needed. So it was a win-win for everybody, for the community, and maybe it saved her life, or it certainly gave her a better life. And for the people in your organization to say, hey, we really matter. It's like the doctor performing a successful operation. So that, on her behalf, thank you.
And the win-win really extends to, improving the overall quality of life here on Long Island. If you have kids being trafficked 2 miles up the road, it's unhealthy for all of us. If you have kids who are struggling in schools in epic numbers, we're producing a workforce downstream that's not going to be as successful as the ones in the past. And so this benefits all of us. If seniors are struggling in our community and you're watching people hobble out to try to bring their garbage cans in and skipping meals in order to try to make ends meet, that impacts our health as an overall community and impacts our well-being. And so, we always talk about some of the disparities here on Long Island and how the disparities hold us back. This is about leveling the playing field and making this region a better place for everybody. When we help our neighbor out, it gets better for everybody.
How can people join your organization to be part of that change in the community and to really put out a helping hand?
Yeah, we always need help, whether it be volunteering. And so we've had volunteers that have come and painted Nassau Haven for our kids to brighten it up. It could be the Friendly Visitor Program that I mentioned. There's a variety of opportunities. It could be the Thrive Recovery Center if you've got an interest in that. We readily take volunteers. We readily take donations. We need to fundraise about $2 million a year just to keep our programs going. And the biggest thing that I ask of folks is to tell your neighbors and everybody around you about us. As a not-for-profit organization, we spend almost zero on marketing. Right. And so we rely on things like this, and we rely on people to help us get the word out. We can't buy big ads in Times Square and that kind of thing to help get the word out. And so we rely on that word of mouth. So talk about us, tell people about us. If you're in need, please come and see us. We can help you. Pick up the phone. I can guarantee you that a caring, loving individual who will pick up that phone and respond to your needs. And if we're not the right organization, we'll get you to the right place. But we never say, we can't help you. We'll find some way to help you. And we want all of Long Island to be a part of that.
Stacey, on Long Island, we have so many wonderful high schools that are really, and colleges that are really concerned about people and the youth who want to reach out. This seems like would be a great project, first of all, as a learning experience, just to see that how lucky those people are. Yeah. To know there's a resource for perhaps one of their friends. When I go out and walk the dog, every once in a while I see a person sitting alone in the schoolyard and that. And I often wonder, maybe they're just out for the day or want to be with their own thoughts, but is there a problem at home? Is there an abuse situation? Why are they sitting there? So I'm going to use that as a lead. And Dr. Reynolds, if there's someone out there hearing this and saying this, I want to volunteer or be part of it, how do we get in touch?
Yeah, look, now is the time. Our website is fcali.org. We're on all the social media platforms because, quite frankly, you have to be. Google us or call us, 516-746-0350. More than happy to have you as a volunteer, as a recipient of services, as a little bit of both. FCA for 140 years has been about a community coming together to make a difference in a region that has its fair share of challenges that sometimes go ignored.
I really think Dr. Reynolds is the right man in the right place, and thank you for being with us. And I hope you'll come back and bring a success story that involves Nassau Community College.
Absolutely.
When you tell our director, Sean Novett, about that, I'm sure he'll get you in, and we'll have more of these conversations.
Sounds great. I look forward to it. And thank you so much for having me on. It means a lot.
It's been our pleasure and a learning experience for us. We want our audience to know that we've been talking today to Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. He is the president and CEO of FCA, the Family and Children's Association. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks again.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Nassau Community College student Stacy Raine, and we thank you for listening to this week's episode of My Hometown.
We'd like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.